The title of my speech is It Begins With Us. It begins with us, Toastmaster Satish Menon. So, whenever we are leading in a professional environment or in our personal lives, and there is a change that we need to bring in, the first thing that we have to understand is the change has to begin with ourselves. And Mahatma Gandhi very rightly said that be the change that you wish to see in the world. You can't tell somebody that do this or do that and then sit back and say, I'm the only one giving the orders, or I have not done this, but I expect you to do it. That does not work. A lot of times in this world, people look up to people. Even when we are children, as kids, we looked up to our parents. Okay. So when our parents had to persuade us to do something, they led by example. If they told us don't switch on the TV because it's your exam time, you have to sit and study for the exams, they themselves ensured that they did not sit and watch TV. If we were sick and we should not be eating certain types of food, they also ensured that they gave up that food for the duration of time when we were sick, and they only started having it after we got well. So parents started by teaching us how we can do certain things, how we can bring the change, how we can be persuasive by leading by example. And that's what works most of the time. In a professional environment also, if a boss does not have that requisite experience, and if the boss tells the people go and do this, you're not very sure that many people will follow that, because they always look up to somebody and say, tell us how to do this. If you are leading a very experienced team, then it is okay, but they know what to do, then you only need to set the direction. But most of the times when you are working with people who are not that young, who are not that experienced, and who need guidance, they look up to you to say, you do it first, then we will do it later. And that's how you lead by example. You always have heard this word everywhere saying leading by example, leading by example. So leading by example always means that showing people the way it needs to happen. Now let's take the example of Mahatma Gandhi himself. Okay. When he said that he wants to fight the British, he led by example. And the best way that he led by example is to say, he just said, I'm going on a fast. Yeah. So he didn't say, I will take up violence, or I will encourage my supporters to become violent and I'll sit back and do nothing. He said, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going on a fast. And that helped, because when the Britishers looked at him, they said, I mean, he's somebody who's giving up food, he's giving up everything. What if something happens to him tomorrow? It will be a big problem. So most of the times they did kind of accede to whatever he had to kind of tell them to do. So that was a way of leading by example. When you look at Netaji Subhash Bose, who led the Indian National Army, Netaji Subhash Bose was in the forefront of building the Indian National Army, managing, getting all the team together, going to foreign countries, asking for help, and then building that big force which could then fight the British militarily. He didn't sit in one corner of one room saying, telling the others, you do whatever you want to do. Okay. And this is what I'm telling you to do, so you better go and do that. No, he was there in the forefront. Okay. He's the one who created it, the Indian National Army. He's the one who was the face of the Indian National Army, and he's the one who led by example. So if you look at Gandhi, if you look at Netaji Subhash Bose, they both led by example. And that's how they could motivate a lot of people to do what they believed was the right thing, which was to go and fight for freedom. So leading by example works in the right manner when people see that the leaders are doing it. In Toastmasters also, it is a similar thing. If I want my club members to give speeches. As a club president, first I should be giving a speech. I can't not give a speech and tell others to give a speech. It will not work. Okay? Because someday somebody will stand up and ask, you are telling us to do all of this, how many speeches have you given? Okay? So if you want to lead, you have to first lead by example. It's only when you lead by example that others will also follow. Now, some people will say that's not something which you see most people doing. Okay? See, there are different forms of persuasion leadership, but one of the best forms is you showing what to do, because when you lead the path, others will follow. And leading the path is always not to start something new, but it's also to tell people what they should be doing. Okay? Sometimes a lot of people are inexperienced, they don't know what to do. Okay? They look up to you for guidance. Sometimes they are afraid. They want to do it, but they are very afraid of keeping the first step. It's only when somebody leads the way and say, yes, I will lead, then they kind of follow you. So leading by example is one of the best forms of persuasive methods. It has worked in the past. Nations have been formed because some leaders took that path. Big organizations are founded by people who led by example. And I'm sure even a club like ours will grow to a better club if we as club leaders lead the way and follow by example. Thank you, and back to you, Toastmaster of the day.
Toastmaster Umar for the evaluation of Satish speech. Yeah.
Thank you, General Evaluator Toastmaster Kumrave. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests, and especially my target speaker, distinguished Toastmaster Satish Menon. As usual, you rocked on your speech. You really persuaded us with your persuasive speaking skills, I should say. The way you mentioned the quotes at the start and between, you sprinkle the quotes here and there, especially like when you said by Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. Yes, that is the best way of persuasion. Only if you change, you can make others change. You actually hit the right knack of showing what persuasion is. And the way you mentioned, like lead by example. Yes, of course, leading by example is the best way of persuasion, and you have mentioned that as well. So showing like what are all the ways you can persuade others is the right thing to do. And also you mentioned like motivation, or how motivation always persuade others. The right way of motivation is the best way of persuasion. I totally agree with you. And I really love the clear language, clear flow of speech, the way you were so confident and you engaged completely with us with a thorough speech. And you quoted very good examples of Gandhiji, Netaji, which is well known to us. So we were able to connect with your content. Of course, as a speech evaluator, I have a couple of suggestions for you. One, I kind of felt like the speech was completely generic as one single entity. Like you were talking about, you jumped right into the topic. I kind of felt you can set the stage with first two sentences, like setting the stage for us to get ready what the speech is all about, what persuasion is all about, which will help us to get along with you in the speech. More or less like splitting the speech into three structures, like what, why, and how. What is persuasion, why we need persuasion, and how we can do persuasion, which will help us to follow the speech even more better. And I kind of felt like you mentioned this term lead by example more and more, especially when that is not the topic of the speech. And if you quote the same sentence again and again, it might be repetitive. So either you could have switched your speech title as lead by example, or you could have quoted that statement a little bit less. And obviously, we all love your personal stories. And if you had any personal story in this, we would have loved more. So speech structure, your personal story, and reducing the repetitive of statements will always be great. And this is my humble suggestion for you. And over to you, General Evaluator.